I've got so many things buried here. There we go.
Welcome to another episode of Sounds Reasonable. I am your host, Dr. Brad, and I am joined in the production of our weekly show by Tim and Tracy. We're all members of the Free Thought community, and our Sounds Reasonable website can be found on Facebook. Do you experience frequent irrational thoughts, a pervasive belief in a divine skydad, an insatiable urge to read horoscopes, perform spells, speak in tongues, or pray? Fortunately, you are now listening to the cure for these ailments. Sounds Reasonable. This show is dedicated to you, the listener, to bring you the latest news in free thought, science, logic and reason, and politics and religion. And of course, we encourage you to share your thoughts with us after each episode by posting comments and asking questions on our Facebook page. What is free thought? What does it mean to be a free thinker? The dictionary definition is a person who forms opinions about religion based on reason, independent of tradition, authority, or established belief. Here's Christopher Hitchens' working definition. Our belief is not a belief. Our principles are not a faith. We do not rely solely upon science and reason because these are necessary rather than sufficient factors, but we distrust anything that contradicts science or outrages reason. We may differ on many things, but what we respect is free inquiry, open-mindedness, and the pursuit of ideas for their own sake. We'll now move on to our science news segment, and remember that the scientific mind is one that allows its perceptions of reality to be constrained by good evidence and good argument. How do our cells know, in quotes, they are our cells and not someone else's? How are our cells able to distinguish normal cells from cells that are infected with a virus? Why can't we use any individual's organs to transplant to any other person? Why are animals that are highly inbred more susceptible to disease than outbred populations of the same animal? The answer to all these questions is provided by the same molecules, known as histocompatibility proteins, also known as, in terms of humans, human leukocyte antigens, or HLA. Now, if I can have the first figure, Tim.
You bet.
So, first of all, what are HLA antigens? Well, HLA antigens are proteins that are found on the surface of all nucleated cells. And that's those are going to be the molecules on the right, the class 1 molecules. Again, those molecules are found on all nucleated cells. The so-called class 2 molecules are more specialized and are found only on certain immune system cells. So in essence, we're going to ignore those for today's discussion and just focus on the class 1 molecules. Now, the class 1 molecules consist of what's described as a heavy chain, and those are the chains shown in purple. And there are three types of these, simply designated as A, B, or C. And they are joined with a second smaller molecule known as beta-2M or beta-2 microglobulin. And that's indicated by the little orange blob down below. Okay, so those two proteins comprise the class 1 molecules. It's these molecules that allow a cell to distinguish self from non-self. Okay? So if you are different in these molecules from another individual, you will not be able to receive a transplant from them. You have to get these molecules matched up as best as you possibly can before attempting a transplant. And we'll describe what happens if you are uncompatible with these molecules with a transplant here in a little bit. So if I could have the next figure, please, Tim. Okay, so this figure shows how we are able to detect a virally infected cell using these HLA molecules. So if starting on the left, so if we have an infected target cell, that target cell is going to express part of the viral proteins on the surface of the cell. So that's one of the main functions of these molecules, is to present viral antigens to the immune system. Now, once that has happened, that viral protein can now be recognized by a T cell known as CD8 plus or cytotoxic T cell. And the net effect of that recognition is to cause the direct destruction of the infected cell. And that's shown all the way on the right-hand side. Now, I should note that without the action of cytotoxic T cells, you cannot successfully eliminate a viral infection. And the last figure, please, Tim. So as I pointed out just a moment ago, there we go. As I pointed out just a moment ago, you also have to have these molecules being at least very similar, if not identical, to be able to successfully transplant an organ from one person to another. The reason is that your T cells can directly detect, and that's being shown on the left-hand side here, direct allorecognition, can directly detect foreign proteins from someone that has donated the organ. So if you are not compatible, okay, you're going to have the same action that we just described for virally infected cells. Okay, you're going to end up destroying the donor cell. Okay, so as we pointed out at the beginning, all of those processes are all dependent upon the same molecule, the class 1 HLA molecules. Now, the detection of a person's HLA molecules can indirectly be determined by an individual's body odor. Also, the efficiency of fertilization of a woman's eggs by male sperm is influenced by HLA molecules. Tim has this fascinating story, so Tim, tell us all about it.
Thanks, Dr. Brad, for, again, a very informative background info on the HLA molecules, which will help us kind of understand what I'm going to talk about. Like you mentioned, Dr. Brad, there have been several studies showing the connection between the HLA molecules, male body odor, and a woman's choice in mate preference. Early studies I ran across, one in particular was published in 1995, and again, there have been similar follow-up studies that shown this connection. And one that I ran across that I thought was very interesting was from an article published in Nature Genetics in 2002. It involved 49 women who were asked to smell boxes which contained pieces of t-shirts that had either been worn by men or contained a familiar household odor such as bleach or clove. Which I guess I didn't know clove was a familiar household odor anyway. But the men who had worn the t-shirts were selected based on their HLA genes and were told to sleep in the t-shirts for 2 consecutive nights while avoiding other scents entirely, such as colognes and even contact with other people. The women were then asked to rate each scent based on their familiarity, the intensity, pleasantness, spiciness. I'm not sure what that means for sure, but as well as select one odor which they would choose if they had to smell it all the time. They would choose that odor. Okay. So what they found was the women chose the scent of men with HLA genes that were dissimilar to their own. And what was also interesting in the HLA genes, they were ones inherited from the man's HLA genes, were ones that were inherited from their father and not their mother. So based on those studies, it was believed that there are 2 major reasons, of course, for preferring to mate with different genes other than their own. The first is that the parents would produce offspring that were more diverse in their HLA genes, and maybe giving them better immune systems. And then secondly, they speculated it had to do with, avoiding inbreeding. And then when they've looked at other studies showing, comparing married people and their HLA genes, they're seeing again these differences in HLA gene types. Okay, so that's again a little background there to what's kind of gone on, and that brings us to the main story I want to talk about today. And this story comes to us from The Scientist on August 18th this year, and written by Abby Olina, titled "Women's Cervical Mucus Prefers Some Sperm Over Others." So so it looks like they've uncovered another way that the woman's body or bodies can affect which egg gets fertilized with what sperm. The study was published on August 19th of this year in the Proceedings of the Royal Society B, and researchers found that sperm functioned better in cervical mucus from women with less similar HLA genes. With more similar genotypes, sperm were less likely to survive exposure in the cervical mucus. Now, of course, we've known this. There's these in animals and birds and fish, for instance. It's clear that having dissimilar genes for the MHC molecules, which, as Dr. Brad talked about, is that equivalent to the HLAs in humans, it influences their choices of mate, gamete compatibility, and eventually success in fertilization. And so the subsequent variety of MHC alleles is thought to prepare offspring to face a wide range of pathogens and therefore increase their chances for survival. In people, researchers have determined that the HLAs may be present on the surface of the sperm, and that soluble HLAs are found in the cervical mucus, which is again the fluid released by the glands in the cervix, raising the possibility that a well-matched egg and sperm could be a factor in humans too. In many, quote, in many animal species, not all the male-female combinations are equally compatible at the gamete level, says Huka Karlinia, a biologist at the University of Eastern Finland. Knowledge of gamete compatibility in people is limited, he adds, and could provide insight into human infertility. There is no routine test for this kind of compatibility in medicine, he adds. Quote, normally doctors just study whether the sperm quality looks okay and whether there are any problems in the female that could easily explain infertility. So to begin to address this question, he and his colleagues collected cervical mucus samples from 9 women and sperm samples from 8 men, which again, and they point this out, it's a relatively low study right now, a low sample size. The researchers also genotyped each subject's HLA sequences. They created all possible one-to-one combinations and diluted cervical mucus with sperm and observed how the sperm fared. Sperm are more likely to survive in male-female combinations that shared fewer genetic similarities, indicating that the immunological compatibility may affect fertility. Quote, it's very plausible that it can be advantageous to choose your mate so that your offspring is optimally set to recognize pathogens for a highly immunocompetent immune system. Says Tobias Lentz, a biologist at the Max Planck Institute for Evolutionary Biology. And again, in this case, he was not involved in that work. The authors of the paper, as the authors write in the paper, this question of how HLA genotype can influence post-copulatory sexual selection, quote, should now be studied in larger contexts with a larger database to test whether it leads to differential levels of fertilization. He adds, quote, here they look at certain fitness traits of the sperm which can be assumed to affect fertilization success, but would then be nice to actually show that in a study. So now they're again looking at continuing the study. They have identified this association between sperm viability and HLA genotypes. They plan to focus on identifying the mechanism that underlies it. In another study published August 3rd, they uncovered a similar association between the genes of HLA systems and sperm mortality in the follicle fluid, which surrounds the unfertilized human oocyte. They're currently confirming whether or not HLAs are present on the surface of sperm cells and investigating their gene expression to determine what other genes might be involved in post-copulatory sexual selection. Unlike in birds and fish, it's hard to determine whether these mechanisms produce more viable or more healthy offspring in people. It would be, quote, it wouldn't be that surprising given that we know about other species, given what we know about other species, but it would obviously open up lots of opportunity for fertility treatments. So Dr. Brad and Tracy, I find these studies really fascinating and extremely interesting. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean,
I find it interesting too.
Yeah, it's clearly fascinating, and it's the HLA antigens are turning out to kind of be a double-edged sword here, because if you think about it, during pregnancy the fetus is a transplant,
right?
So one half of the HLA antigens will be the father's, and of course those are not compatible with the mom. And so the placenta has developed mechanisms to prevent the immune system from recognizing the fetal antigens during pregnancy. And interestingly enough, one of the major ones is itself an HLA antigen. It's known as HLA-G, which causes downregulation of the immune response to fetal antigens. So it's an amazing set of molecules that does an incredible number of things, and this was certainly one that is brand new. I certainly was not aware of it before.
Yeah, it was, and the one article talked about wondering if it becomes too different, too dissimilar, if that might be a problem, and I could maybe see that with maybe trying to protect the fetus. I mean, is it possible that if your HLAs are so dissimilar, mother and fetus, that might be tougher on the fetus to survive, possibly? I don't know.
It could very well. I forget the numbers here. So if either of you know them, shout them out. But what is it about? It's estimated about 50% of pregnancies fail, or fertilization events fail, or it's pretty high. It's amazingly high. So I wish I would have looked that up ahead of time. I didn't think. Well, I didn't think of it till now. So.
Right.
Right, and of course they're strongly hinting that this is something that may help with those that are having problems conceiving. Looking at that factor as far as sperm not be able to survive in the mucus. So
yeah.
Or if a woman's looking for a sperm donor, they could
Right,
look at
that's
these different
another good
factors
point.
too.
Yeah, very good point. Yeah, so if they're looking for a sperm donor, and then also, there's been experimental attempts to develop birth control vaccines. So if you knew which, of course, that could be dangerous. So I don't know if I'd recommend immunizing against HLA molecules,
right,
but they have identified other antigens on sperm that that are only on sperm,
right.
so not part of the female's constellation of genes. So
You want to be very specific about what you're targeting there.
yes, absolutely. I wonder how do they have any feel, or did they speculate as to how the mucus is recognizing HLA antigens?
No, they didn't, other than just, and again, saying that they think it's, I assume they're thinking that the women are producing or releasing HLA into the mucus. But I don't, they kind of alluded to that, but no, I didn't see any discussion on that or run across that.
Yeah, there are cells in the immune system that will recognize the absence of certain HLA molecules and then attack when certain molecules are absent. But that wouldn't seem to be the route we'd expect here. So that'll be interesting to, I'm sure they're working on that question. It's one that's too fundamental not to be, I suppose.
Well, I'd always heard some talk about, they speculated that there was something going on with sperm and survival, and some, they're talking about the acidicness of the environment, or is it something, well, and I always wondered about this because I always heard, well, X sperm not surviving as well as Y sperm, but then if that's the case, you'd have the higher percentage of females would be a lot higher. But
it's a little higher, of course. It's typically around 51 to 49.
So,
but I've always heard that was primarily due to recessives on the X. So in males, of course, those would be expressed,
right.
And in females, not necessarily expressed. And so that was always the explanation I was given as to the difference between not having an exact 50-50 ratio as you would expect from pure probability. So yeah, have to wait and see.
Yes, it'll be fascinating to see what comes out of these studies.
Yeah, well,
Definitely.
all right. I think we'll go ahead and take our first break. So we'll be right back with more Sounds Reasonable.
Everything that brought me alive, but we're all like monsters playing with the promises. They brought me alive, but got no alibi. It's a lover's fight without an alibi. Took my innocence without an alibi.
And we're back with more Sounds Reasonable on September 20th, 2020. And while I'm thinking about it, since I won't see you until the day is actually passed, happy autumn equinox.
Hey.
The September 22nd this year at 8:30 Central. So that's the official time where the sun will be directly over the equator. So again, a happy autumn equinox. Now, does anyone remember the Ringo Starr song, Back Off Boogaloo?
I do.
Tracy, did you ever hear that song? Back Off
That-
Boogaloo?
No, I don't think so.
I've got
Sing
it.
it.
Sing it. Well, I want our audience to stay tuned, so I won't do that. But I've got the video posted on Facebook. It's hilarious. So take a look at it, folks. It is funny. So I wish we could play it, but that is not allowed for copyright reasons. So, but as I mentioned, I do have it posted on our Facebook page. So give it a look. Now, I wish getting rid of the right-wing group Boogaloo was as easy as playing the song, but unfortunately it is not. Right-wing violence has been on the rise ever since Trump took office. And one of the more prominent groups perpetrating this violence are the so-called Boogaloo Boys. The following summary of who and what Boogaloo is from Wikipedia. The Boogaloo movement, whose adherents are often referred to as Boogaloo Boys, is a loosely organized far-right anti-government and extremist political movement in the United States. The movement has also been described as a militia. And we're going to see direct examples of this here in just a moment. Boogaloo adherents say they are preparing for or seek to incite a second American Civil War, which they call the Boogaloo. So that's where the name actually comes from. The term Boogaloo has been used on the fringe image board website 4chan since 2012, but it did not come to widespread attention until late 2019. Adherents use the term Boogaloo, including variations, so as to avoid social media crackdowns to refer to violent uprisings against the federal government or left-wing political opponents, often anticipated to follow government confiscation of firearms. So here again, we've got the myth that if we elect a Democratic president, your guns are gone, folks. Ah! Oh, sorry.
Magically disappear.
Now, the movement consists of pro-gun, anti-government groups, and the specific ideology of each group varies, and views on topics such as race differ widely. Some are white supremacist or neo-Nazi groups who believe that the impending unrest will be a race war. There are also groups that condemn racism and white supremacy, although attempts by some individual elements of the movement to support anti-racist groups such as Black Lives Matter have been met with wariness and skepticism, as researchers are unsure if they are genuine or meant to obscure the movement's actual objectives. The Boogaloo movement primarily organizes online, and participants have appeared at in-person events, including the 2020 United States anti-lockdown protests, So some of those marvelous people that brought their rifles and automatic weapons into the Michigan legislature were boogaloo boys. And naturally, I just lost my spot. Right, and the George Floyd protests. So they were also at those. Heavily armed members of boogaloo groups are often identified by their attire of Hawaiian shirts and military fatigues. So an interesting variety of attire there.
So they're fashion conscious too.
Exactly. At least we can give them that.
Right on.
Now, since 2019, at least 12 people affiliated with the boogaloo movement have been charged with crimes, including the killings of 2 security and law enforcement officers in May and June of 2020, and incidents related to the George Floyd protests.
Mm.
In May and June 2020, several companies acted to limit the movement's activity and visibility on their social media and chat platforms. The group even has its own flag. So Tim, if you could show that figure, please.
You bet.
So here's the Boogaloo Boys official flag, apparently. And I'm not sure what everything on there means, but I suppose they put an igloo because it rhymes with boogaloos.
Yeah, I was wondering that myself.
I'm not sure why else the igloo's there, unless they're expecting Eskimos to come participate with them. I don't know, but anyway, if you ever see this, that's be aware, okay, that you're dealing with Boogaloo Boys. Okay, thanks, Tim. Now, the story I'm going to relate today is from Forbes magazine. It was published June 16th of this year, authored by Tommy Beer, entitled "Accused Killer of California Cops Was Associated with Right-Wing Boogaloo Movement." Now, the FBI announced Tuesday that Stephen Carrillo, the U.S. Air Force sergeant who allegedly murdered law enforcement officers in California during protests earlier this month, was associated with the right-wing Boogaloo movement, and that Carrillo chose the timing of his attacks to, quote, take advantage of a time when the nation was mourning the killing of George Floyd. Now, some key facts concerning this case. Last week, Carrillo was charged with murder after he ambushed Santa Cruz deputies and threw pipe bombs at police on June 6th, killing Sergeant Damon Gutzwiller and wounding 4 other officers. On Tuesday, the FBI announced that Carrillo has also been federally charged with the murder of Federal Security Officer Pat Underwood, who was killed in a drive-by shooting on May 29th in Oakland. A suspected accomplice, Robert Alvin Justus Jr., has been arrested as well. Justus was allegedly the driver of the van used in both the Oakland Federal Building shooting and the Santa Cruz attack. Before he was apprehended, Carrillo reportedly scrawled the word "boog" and, in quotes, "I became unreasonable" in blood on the hood of a car. Yes, I would say you did become unreasonable. And of course, boog is short for boogaloo, which according to NBC News, again, is a far-right anti-government movement that began on the extremist site 4chan and aims to start a second American Civil War. The phrase, "I became unreasonable," has seemingly become a meme in public boogaloo communities on Facebook. Nothing like being proud of being unreasonable. Authorities say they found a boogaloo patch in the van the duo used, and it was my understanding that boogaloo patch was the flag that we just showed. So some key background. During Tuesday's press conference, FBI agent Jack Bennett said Carrillo and Justice purposefully chose the protest as the locality of the killing to blend in better and to take advantage of community grief over the police killing of George Floyd. Quote, there is no evidence that these men had any intention to join the demonstration in Oakland. They came to Oakland to kill cops, Bennett said. Carrillo has been charged with 19 felonies related to the attack, and the charges carry enhancements of lying in wait, which means that Carrillo will be eligible for the death penalty. However, prosecutors have not said if they will pursue death. According to an ATF official, the weapon used in the fatal shootings was a homemade so-called ghost gun without a serial number. This firearm is a machine gun with a silencer attached to its barrel, said the official. Tangent. Attorney General William Barr and other top government officials, including President Trump, have frequently blamed Antifa activists for the violence stemming from recent demonstrations in the wake of George Floyd's death. However, last week, NPR published a review of court documents of 51 individuals facing federal charges related to protests, and none is alleged to have links to the Antifa movement. Among all the cases brought by the Justice Department thus far, the only extremist group mentioned in court documents is the right-wing boogaloo movement. Critical quote, elements of the boogaloo have evolved from a gathering of militia enthusiasts and Second Amendment advocates into a full-fledged violent extremist group which inspires lone wolf actors and cell-like actors alike, said Joel Finkelstein, director of the Network Contagion Research Institute. Quote, given recent events and the inability of law enforcement to grasp and intercept this new mode of distributed terror, we think an increase in these kinds of violent attacks against police are almost inevitable. Now, despite all the violence that has erupted from this particular group and their ilk, Trump, Pence, and Barr have remained silent. They instead have tried to lay blame on Antifa, which we described earlier as a movement, not a group. And as I just mentioned in the article, the recent study of 51 protesters arrested on federal charges following the George Floyd incident have not shown association with Antifa. So, where is the evidence, Mr. President, that Antifa has been responsible for any of the violent acts that have occurred? Your blatant ignoring of the facts that hate groups from the right have been primarily responsible is glaring. Tim, Tracy, your comments, please.
He never has evidence for anything. I don't think he thinks he has to. He thinks his evidence is opening his mouth. I don't think he knows what evidence is.
And again, like you mentioned, Dr. Brad, it's a shame that they're not, unless it's behind the scenes, that they're not focusing on doing something about this group, finding ways of disbanding it or attacking it or whatever it might be. And obviously the FBI have to be watching them. I mean, they are, but
clearly we're going to have law enforcement groups keeping a watch on them. Okay. But to me, this is just Charlottesville all over again. Great people on both sides, Right. As long as he views these people as his supporters, he could care less.
Right. I don't think we should expect anything from him.
Yeah, we're obviously not going to get anything from him on this. But what is really starting to frighten me now is with the election coming up, if we have the election night results showing that Trump wins without yet the postal votes being counted,
Mm-hmm.
I just have this incredibly deep gut feeling, and that's of course not being reasonable, right? Going with a deep gut feeling, but I can't help it here. It's a pain in the pit of my stomach that
Right.
groups like this are going to take to the streets and demand the election be over. That hey, Trump won. It's over. And here's our guns to back it up. That's something that I truly am frightened about. What's it called? There's a term for it.
Lovable justice.
The red mirage. The red mirage. That was the term I was trying to think of. Yeah,
That's
the
a good
red
one.
mirage.
Mhm.
So if the red mirage makes an appearance on the election night and Trump goes on TV declaring I'm the winner, I don't know. I mean, this could be the most frightening time of our lives.
Well, and again, we can only control the things we control, and again, it's getting out, like we talked about last week, is getting people out, getting people in to vote. And again, you're right with what they've done to try to slow down the mail system, and the fact that it's not going to be, if it's close, which God, I hope it isn't.
I know.
Please, flying spaghetti monster. No.
Yeah.
No.
If there was a God, they'd strike him dead. But so again, if it is close, you're right. There's going to be
Pandemonium.
Chaos, pandemonium, on both sides. So again, the one thing we can control is getting out, getting the people out to vote. Doing the best we can to do that.
Yeah. So I post stuff all the time. Vote.
Vote. Exactly. Arkansas is going to be a bad place to be.
Yeah, sure. I don't know how you handle it, Tracy. Nebraska's bad enough for Tim and I.
It's hard.
Oh, all right. Well, on that happy note, I guess we'll take our second break. So we'll be right back with more Sounds Reasonable after this.
Messing with my head again. You had your heart set on me, but these feels, they come and go, and they come so easily. Tell me what it is about you that I can't forget, but you're breaking down my walls again just to set me free. Why do I, baby, why do I love the way you always leave me? Why do I, baby, why do I love the touch but never love the feeling? Why do I, baby, why do I love the way you always leave me? Why do I, baby, why do I love the touch but never love the feeling?
And we're back with more Sounds Reasonable. The right-wing conspiracy called QAnon has gained a fair amount of traction over the past few years. And Tracy has been providing a 4-part series expose on QAnon. Last week was part 3, so we'll be wrapping things up on QAnon. So Tracy, fill us in on your last part here.
Okay, what we're going to do to finalize the series, and this could really just go on and on and on and on. There's so much stuff, but we're going to leave the United States. The whole QAnon conspiracy angle is kind of built around Donald Trump as the epicenter of the whole deal, but this has gained ground in the UK. Analysis is shown, and that's what we're going to talk about today. And I found this story in The Guardian from September 18th. QAnon conspiracy theory gaining ground in UK, analysis shows. A conspiracy theory that Donald Trump is waging a secret war against an elite who engage in ritual child abuse is growing across UK social media, Guardian analysis has found. The QAnon conspiracy theory is propelled by an unlikely coalition of spirituality and wellness groups, vigilante pedophile hunter networks, pre-existing conspiracy forums, local news pages, pro-Brexit campaigners, and the far right. The Guardian tracked 5 slogans associated with QAnon shared by UK-run Facebook pages over the past year and found interactions on posts containing these keywords increased 5-fold between April and August, the last full month for which data was available. The unfounded conspiracy theory also draws on predecessor conspiracy theory Pizzagate, which was prevalent during the 2016 U.S. presidential elections, as well as much older anti-Semitic conspiracies. In April, there were 18,000 interactions on posts from UK pages containing the keywords, according to analytics tool CrowdTangle. By August this year, engagement had increased significantly with 96,000 reactions, comments, and shares. Offline, a nascent street movement linked to QAnon has organized at least 15 protests across England, Scotland, and Wales. The conspiracy theory is spreading widely among groups who would not usually be associated with the far right. The Guardian categorized the 273 UK-run pages that had posted QAnon content and found that pages dedicated to alternative medicine, spirituality, and mysticism accounted for the highest proportion of engagement, with 68,000 interactions during the past year. Gregory Davis, a researcher at Hope Not Hate, a charity that monitors extremist groups, said, "It's concerning to see QAnon diversifying in terms of how it's spread and what parts of it are being emphasized. What's happening with this diversification is that many groups are taking up different elements of it and introducing elements. The danger is that this makes it even less disprovable." A Facebook page linked to a business selling essential oils and courses in numerology, spiritual guidance, and meditation, which has more than 1 million followers on Facebook, received the second highest number of interactions on any page measured. One of these posts was a viral video describing a conspiracy theory about a toy doll, which the original poster alleged showed the head of a satanic Luciferian monster when dipped in cold water. It had 11 million views at the time of writing. Conspiracies about toys containing secret messages are common among QAnon believers. first we've heard about this, right, guys? The analysis also found QAnon is merging with pre-existing conspiracy theory pages. There were more than 40 pages promoting other conspiracies, including chemtrails, flat earth, and anti-vax pages, which had recently posted content associated with QAnon, receiving 40,000 interactions during this period. Vigilante pedophile hunter groups, whose members sometimes pose as children online to entrap potential sexual predators, were also influential in spreading the conspiracy. The Guardian found 12 pedophile hunter groups shared QAnon material, receiving 13,000 interactions over the period. The analysis also found 10 pro-Brexit pages and 28 far-right pages had shared QAnon content, receiving 26,000 interactions. One pro-Brexit news account often received thousands of interactions on its QAnon posts, which included false claims about Trump rescuing children from underground tunnels and an introductory video to QAnon for its sometimes confused British followers. A further 9 pages analyzed were specifically devoted to sharing QAnon news. A number of QAnon-related posts found a less obvious home on local community Facebook pages, with 23 groups dedicated to local area in the UK sharing material related to the theory. Offline, a street movement with links to QAnon has hosted protests in 12 towns and cities across the UK. Most of the events have been organized by Freedom for the Children UK, a Facebook group that has about 12,000 members and was inspired by a U.S. organization of the same name. So what they do is take these, like, what sounds, to be a good cause, save the children, or, stop pedophiles and all of that, and then throw their QAnon stuff in there and try to rope some more people in, and it's obviously working. Several of the organizers of the Freedom for the Children events have expressed beliefs in QAnon, according to a report by Hope Not Hate. A spokesperson for Facebook said, "This analysis does not reflect either of the actions we're talking or the policies we have in place to keep people safe on our platform. We removed posts that incite violence, and we recently expanded our policies to specifically address organizations and movements like QAnon. We have since removed 790 groups and 100 pages and placed restrictions on over 10,000 Instagram accounts. The effects of Facebook's crackdown, which happened in August, would not be reflected in the Guardian analysis." Davis said, "We always welcome action from Facebook. Recently, they've removed a lot of harmful content, but it's frustrating to see that so much of it is still there. Facebook deleted a few of the major accounts, but it's still incredibly easy to find QAnon content on there. It's hard to put into words how dangerous this narrative is." America faces an epic choice. In the coming months, and the results will define the country for a generation. These are perilous times. Over the last 3 years, much of what The Guardian holds dear has been threatened. Democracy, civility, truth. Hang on. Okay, wait, that has nothing to do with QAnon. That was the end of the story. What do you guys think?
Wow.
How QAnon's passed America, and
that bit about Trump in the tunnels rescuing kids.
I know,
yeah,
right?
I can just see him doing it now. Yeah, that's Trump, all right.
Climbing down.
Yeah. Come here, little children.
Oh, wow.
Just the sheer number of groups that they've had to delete or block that have ties or some connection to QAnon. this being deceptive and, coming in under the disguise of a legitimate, maybe organization, or at least an organization that sounds legitimate. You know what? And if I was Sasquatch, Bigfoot, I'd be pissed that they're not looking at that conspiracy. That's the one they left
right?
out. They left out Bigfoot, but
My name's Daryl. Remember Daryl?
yeah.
What do you mean?
Oh.
What I thought of when you were relaying your story, if we really wanted to try to mess with these people, we should go out and make a Q as a crop circle.
I know, right?
Oh, yes. Yeah, that would be.
Didn't we make a crop circle at camp one year?
We did.
Yeah, don't we have we have the power to do that, right?
Yeah, all we got to do is get Tom Gray, and he'll bring his stuff, and we'll go make a Q crop circle.
That would be great.
I say we do it.
Have a plane or get a drone to fly over and take a picture of it. And,
Yeah. That's what we
did.
did. That's what we did at camp.
Yeah.
It was intended. Well, that would be.
It was great.
Then we could
We could really, really mess with these people.
work in the boogaloo flag with it too.
Yeah.
The boogaloo.
Yeah, a Q next to an igloo.
Yeah. When I saw that, back to that igloo, it just doesn't make any sense. I wonder what.
Like I said, the only thing I could think of is that it rhymes with boogaloo. Maybe they couldn't think of anything else that
Boogaloo,
did.
igloo, igloo.
They might,
Boogaloo igloo. Or
maybe they love Eskimo pie ice cream bars or something.
Maybe that's their sponsor. Maybe they have a sponsor.
Eskimo pie. Yeah.
Brought to you by Igloo Products.
Did you see a little trademark, like a little?
An ice housing.
Yeah. You too can have your own ice house. Yeah.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah.
Well, we had to get some levity in there somewhere.
I know. It's just
Pretty heavy show, and unfortunately, our crazy story is not going to be all that humorous this time. It will be crazy, but not all that humorous.
Uh-oh. Serious crazy?
Yeah, so serious crazy this time, I'm afraid. So
Oh.
we'll be right back with our crazy story of the week.
I'm feeling so hollow. Don't you know? And don't you know? I'm living in shadow. Don't you know? And don't you know? I fell for fool's gold. I fell for fool's gold. What did I know? What did I know? I fell for fool's gold. I fell for fool's gold. What did I know? What did I know? And you were fool's gold. Yes, I did. Yes, I did.
And welcome back for our crazy story of the week. The song that we play right before the crazy story, as we made mention before, is called Fool's Gold. And boy, I sure hope a lot of people that are involved with this guy can manage to realize that is exactly what they should be thinking about here is Fool's Gold. We seem to be awash in stories involving revolution these days. But contrary to what our current president would have you believe, most of these anarchy movements are coming from the right. Our crazy story of the week comes from Newsweek, authored by Barry Duke on September 16th of this year. And the title of the article is Christian Militias Must Prepare for Another American Civil War. And I've never in my lifetime heard so much mention of civil war. None of my grandparents, it'd be my great-grandparents, I suppose, would have been alive during our actual Civil War. One of my grandmothers was born in 1898, which of course would be 33 years after the end of the Civil War. So it would have been her parents that would have been alive then. Neither the American War of Independence nor the Civil War delivered freedom and equality for all. So, third war is inevitable, says evangelical pastor Rick Joyner, who heads, sorry about that, pages are stuck here, who heads Morning Star Ministries in North Carolina. According to Newsweek, Joyner, a guest this week on the Jim Baker Show, urged Christians to mobilize to fight a civil war against left-wing activists. Joyner, who recently described Black Lives Matter protesters as the KKK of this time, said, "We are in time for war. We need to recognize that. We need to mobilize." He said he'd seen in a dream that militias would pop up like mushrooms and they would be backed by God. The pastor went on to say that God had seeded the U.S., that's S-E-E-D-E-D, okay, had seeded the U.S. with veterans of recent wars who, quote, know how to fight in urban warfare. These veterans, Joyner called them patriots, would be a part of the leadership of these militias and help us in what is about to unfold in our own country. These are going to be those who know what the tyranny of Marxism is. And they have seen its evidence and the cruelty of some other ideologies and all that is out there. God has prepared us for this. Joyner later told Newsweek that he discourages people from joining racist or extremist militia groups. Yeah, it sounds like he's pretty discouraging of that. All right. Yeah, sure does. Though militias have gotten a bad name in recent times for their often racist or other extremist views, to have a militia is a constitutional right. First part of the Second Amendment, he points out. The pastor also said that a new civil war is necessary. Again, it sounds like he's really discouraging these groups. From heaven's perspective, because the Revolutionary War and the Civil War did not fully accomplish their goals, so another revolution/civil war was now inevitable. Joyner has been a vocal Donald Trump supporter. Oh, knocked me over with a feather on that one, huh?
Right.
In a June 2017 Facebook Live video, he said, by the end of Trump's presidency, he will be considered one of the greatest presidents we have had since the founders. Well, isn't that special?
Oh.
Your comments, guys. You going to start arming up? Should we start buying automatic weapons and bayonets and grenades? And
Yeah, sure.
And and again, it's the administration and the fact that he's just given the green light to all of these extremist groups, and and where before they would never publicly say these types of things, maybe privately, you know, they're now not afraid to publicly come out with these types of comments and thoughts. And I wonder why. I thought the Revolutionary War did accomplish its goal. I wonder what goal they didn't accomplish. But
Well, a lot of people like these right-wing pastors think that what wasn't accomplished was true religious freedom, and of course, what they mean by that is their religion being the law of the land.
right.
That's their code. That's their code for quote unquote religious freedom.
As long as you're in my religion, then
Right. If you're in my religion, of course you're free to practice it.
yeah. No problem. Yeah.
So like I said earlier, I mean, this is the scariest time I've ever remembered. I'm sure my parents were scared to death during the Cuban Missile Crisis. I was only 5 at the time, and you guys weren't a lot, or let's see, 8 at the time, and you guys weren't alive yet.
I think.
Were you? You overlapped with the Cuban Missile Crisis?
I was born in 58.
Oh, 58. Oh, well, you're older than I thought then. Crime.
Yeah, thanks.
Oh, gosh.
Cat's out of the bag now. The old cat.
Yeah, I thought you were this young guy, we'd found for the show.
I put this old man makeup on for the show. Nope, I'm right in there.
Yeah, but anyway, that's that's the only time that I can truly remember as a child seeing genuine concern on my parents' faces for several days. That they were really worried about that situation. And I'm starting to see that now with people that I know with this election coming up. So let's hope that somehow cooler heads prevail, and the government works the way it's supposed to, the election works the way it's supposed to, and this nightmare we've called Trump just becomes a bad memory.
Yeah.
Yep.
The thing is, I think most of these, if there are those groups, which there are those militia groups out there, but there's got to be someone that organizes them, and I don't see that unless it's Trump or somebody like that, but that gets them organized. Right now, they're kind of be a disorganized groups that.
Hope so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What frightens me though is it sometimes is these military guys that do this stuff. I don't know if I ever relayed this story, and I'll be brief here, but when I was coaching football, I went out to the Air Force Academy to learn option football. I mean, they're really good at it. Obviously, relatively close for me to go out there. So I went, and Fisher DeBerry was the head coach at the time. And when the practice was ending, he gathered the team in, and remember, this is a U.S. military team. Okay. He gathers the team in and said, I want everyone to pray for the Catholic Church right now because they are now electing a new pope. And I'm going, what in the hay is going on here? This is the U.S. Air Force Academy.
Right.
You are leading a prayer on, shall we say, military time, on U.S. government property. And that's the type of thing that scares me, that there's going to be a few of those guys that are out there that may indeed try to lead some of this stuff.
Yeah.
So if I didn't frighten you before, maybe I did now. No, just kidding.
Yeah.
I'm always scared. It's okay.
Well, anyway, everyone go have a nice big glass of wine and hit the hot tub if you got one, and just try to forget about this for a few days, and hopefully, like I said, and like we've said, cooler heads will prevail. Well, that'll wrap us up for this week. If you've enjoyed our program, please pass the word to your friends and associates, believers and non-believers alike. Again, just a reminder that you are welcome to post questions and comments on our Facebook page. Remember, there is a big difference between having good reasons for what one accepts to be true and having bad ones. Incidentally, this is the only distinction one needs to become a strict atheist. This has been Dr. Brad for Tracy and Tim saying so long.
Bye.